The 2013 Ripcord Association reunion. We're talking now with Dave Kenyon of Johnson City, New York, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. All right, Dave, can you start us off with some background, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
Well, I was born in Binghamton, New York. It's upstate New York, not associated with New York City. And February 20th, 1949,
Okay.
I was born.
And did you grow up in Binghamton?
Yes, spent my life there,
All
most
right.
of it. Yeah.
And what did your family do for a living then?
Well, my father, he worked at a trailer manufacturing and furniture company, and my mother worked at GE for 37 years.
All right. And how many kids in the family?
Four.
Okay.
Two brothers and one sister.
All right. And where were you in the sequence?
I was number 2.
Okay. All right. And did you finish high school?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. And when did you graduate?
67, January 67.
Okay. And what did you do after you got out of high school?
Well, I got a job at a flooring store. I worked doing carpet and ceramic and all this other stuff, and it kind of runs in my family. My father and my uncles were all carpenters, so.
All right. And now, how aware were you of Vietnam at that time?
Well, you know, I heard of it every once in a while. You heard of a guy dying or that was killed at, you went to school with, but all of my cousins, I have several cousins. My father was one of 15 kids, so we have a rather large family.
Yeah.
And, my cousins, they were getting their draft notices and all this stuff, and, so I was aware with it, but I didn't watch it on TV, I don't think.
Okay, so you didn't have that much of a sense of it. All right. And now, of course, 67, 68, when do you get your draft notice?
Yeah, I would say in 68.
Okay, so kind of maybe late 1968?
Yeah, I would just get, I can't for sure pinpoint it, but...
Yeah. You get the draft, you don't go in immediately at that
No.
point. No, there's a little bit, they tell you when to report and all that.
Get your physical in Binghamton.
All right. Now, when you went for the physical, were there people there trying to find ways to beat the system?
Not that I noticed.
Okay.
I didn't notice that. But
So nothing really obvious going on?
no.
Yeah, they might have had letters from a doctor or something, but...
Right, other than that, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you go there, and I don't know, how seriously do they take the physical?
I don't. They just kind of pass you through. It wasn't nothing strenuous or anything. I mean, just the vitals and stuff like that. But
Yeah. They wanted people at that point.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. And then, so when do you actually have to report for training?
Well, I went to Syracuse, and we flew out of Syracuse to Fort Dix.
Okay. And when did you get to Fort Dix?
It was in March.
Okay.
25 March, something like that.
Okay, 69. All
Yeah.
right. All right. You do basic training then at Fort Dix.
Yeah.
Can you describe that? What did it consist of for you?
Well, when you got there, you had a couple days to orientation, get your gear, your clothes, or whatever, and then you were assigned. And your first time you meet your drill sergeant, he scares the crap out of you. And this is all new because I never left Binghamton. I never flew. I never did nothing. We stayed pretty much to home, So this is a big experience.
And nobody had told you how the Army worked necessarily.
No.
Okay, so
No.
you get a drill sergeant coming at you. Now, once you kind of get past that initial shock, I don't know, how hard was it to adjust to military life?
A little tough, getting up early, having discipline, and after high school, I was out looking for girls and all that stuff. I was a free guy, so sort of. But when you get in the military, your time is set, your schedule is set, and it's a new life, that's for sure.
All right. And now, aside from sort of the discipline aspect, what else did they actually have you do?
Well, you had physical training, a lot of marching, learn your left from your right, obviously, which took a few guys a little more than others, but it was a lot of physical training and weapons training, and that was probably it, basically.
Yeah. And were you in pretty good shape when you went in?
Yeah, not too bad. Probably 70 pounds lighter than him now. So.
So but you did manual labor and things like that.
Oh yeah,
so you had some stamina on that.
Yeah, I
some
did
strength.
a lot of physical labor doing carpentry and stuff
Right.
like that. So.
That part was all right. Okay. Were most of the guys in basic, were they kind of from New York, New Jersey, or are they from somewhere else?
Yeah, well, they were from, I would say the East Coast, upstate I went into basic with my cousin, one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So at least I knew somebody. We went through basic together, and there was, yeah, I would say most of them.
Okay. And were there guys in basic who kind of had an attitude or were getting themselves into trouble?
Nah, I didn't see that too much. You know, everybody was kind of scared like I was. I mean, you know, there might have been a couple, but other than that.
All right. But really, you kind of think a little bit about, some of the kids, especially the city kids out of the Northeast, think they're pretty hot stuff. But
Yeah.
But if they did, they were smart enough to keep quiet.
Yeah, I would say.
Okay. All right.
You didn't look for trouble, I would say.
Right. And do you think most of these guys were draftees, or was there?
Yeah, I would say most of them were. Yeah.
All right. So you kind of, and then the instructors, were there guys who were back from Vietnam?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was just looking at some old papers, and there's one redheaded sergeant, and I thought it was an AIT, but he was in basic, and he says, "You're never going to make it in Nam." I said, and he just stood out, a redheaded sergeant, and that's where I saw him again in the old book from Fort Dix. So
All right.
there was a few of them then that
Okay.
training NCOs and stuff.
All right. Now, how long does basic last?
8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then where do they send you for AIT?
AIT was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, so I came home for a couple days, and then we had to fly to Fort Leonard Wood.
All right. And what MOS were you training for?
Combat engineer.
Okay. And was that in part because of your work experience?
Yeah,
you think,
I did put down. Actually, I wanted heavy equipment or something like that, and then who would have thought I'd get combat engineer, which was something new. So
All right. Now, how was AIT different from basic?
AIT was a lot tougher. I mean, physically, plus you had a lot more classes. You had to learn about demo and bridge building and more weapons, throwing grenades, laws, and all this other stuff. We trained on an M14, and then when you get to Vietnam, we had an M16. But yeah, it was more physical. Actually, I maxed the PT test, which there was 3 guys that did it out of the whole company. So I was in really good shape after that.
All right. And what did you think of the instructors?
Oh, they were all right. They were a little bit more lenient, let's say, but you had your hurry up and wait times, and get here and do that. But it was all right. The instructions were pretty good.
Okay. And were these guys Vietnam vets?
I would say some of them were, especially the demo part. Because that's something you don't learn it sitting in a classroom.
Right.
You learn it in the field.
All right. And do they make any effort to teach you anything about being in Vietnam specifically?
No, we never saw that, no.
So not like having to, some of the infantry training you might get a mock village or things like that,
Yeah,
but not for the engineers.
Maybe, yeah. But the engineers was entirely, it's a specialty, I guess.
Right,
So,
right.
you know.
And you're mostly not blowing up houses. Just knock them over. But,
Right.
all right.
Yep.
Okay, so that another 8 weeks worth?
Yeah, that was 8 more weeks, yeah.
Okay, and then what do they do with you at that point?
Well, then they give us 10 days to 2 weeks off, back home, and that time went fast. I got stopped for speeding. I got out of that cop. "Oh, I'm going to Vietnam," so he let me go. But other than that, then we had to fly to Oakland, California.
Right. And now did you go into the depot at Oakland or just?
Yeah, I can't remember that big, but I imagine.
Yeah.
Actually, I had a brother in the Navy out there. So I went 2 days early just to see him. And I thought, he's going to show me a good time, show me California. California was just huge compared to Binghamton. I mean,
Well, yes.
I mean, it's just huge. So and that's a life-changing experience too. So, but it was different, entirely different. Yeah.
Okay. And then when they fly you out of there, was it on a commercial aircraft or?
Yeah, commercial aircraft. Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember what route you took?
Yeah, we went to Hawaii. Refueled there. I don't even think we got off the plane.
Right.
Or maybe we did for an hour. And then I know we went to Okinawa. And then on to Vietnam.
Okay. And where did you land in Vietnam?
I would say, I'm not sure. Da Nang, what's the other one, the big base?
Well, Da Nang is up north, And then you've got Cameron Bay right along the
Maybe
coast.
Cameron Bay.
With a big harbor and sand dunes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But along the coast, you didn't go to one of the bases by Saigon.
No, I
Okay.
don't think, no.
All right. So you get in there, and what's your first impression of Vietnam?
It's hot and stinky, and you're looking at all the other guys that done their tour, and you know it's all meshed in together there, and it was a little crazy.
And what impression did you have of the men who were on their way home?
They were smiling. You know, what the hell were we in for? You? And that's another thing. You're going to a war zone on a commercial plane. I thought, how bad could this be? You know,
Right.
you know, how bad could it be? But
So you have stewardesses on the plane
Yep.
and that kind of thing.
Yep.
All right. So you land there, and then once you get off the plane, what do they do with you?
I think we had a couple days of indoctrination, and then you get your orders to what unit. You know, because you didn't know. I didn't know I was going to 101st until I got there. And I said,
All right.
I ain't jumping on no freaking planes. You know, I didn't expect that.
So
you know?
you just think airborne, you think the guys in World War II parachuting, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Now, did you know what unit in the 101st you were going to? Or
Yeah, the engineers.
okay. And which engineer battalion did they have?
Just the 326 Engineer Battalion.
Right.
Yep.
Just want to get that on the record. Okay, 326 engineers.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And now, how do you? And then what base do they send you then first with the 101st?
Well, I think we got on a C-130, and I don't know. You went to I-Corps. I don't know for sure which base, but
Camp Eagle probably.
if they had
That's a big airport, and there's also one at. You could land most of the military aircraft at Camp Evans,
Yeah.
but Evans is where the brigade is, where 3rd Brigade was, and
Right.
Camp Eagle was the division base.
yeah.
All
yeah.
right.
So it probably was Camp Evans or Camp Eagle,
Okay.
because then you know you went there and got your gear as well.
Now, when you got there, what kind of setup does the battalion have at the base?
At Camp Eagle? Well, I'm not sure. It's just you get more of your gear, and then you're
Right.
trucked up to Evans, and then you get more gear and your accommodations or whatever they were.
Okay. Now, do they put you in a particular company or platoon within the battalion, or what do they
Yeah, it
do
was
with you?
B Company. I don't know what squad it was,
Okay.
but there's a couple squads in each hooch.
All right, so you're assigned to B Company, and then what kind of, I don't know, how did the guys treat you when you joined the unit?
Yeah, you're a cherry, and rookie coming in, and but they treated everybody the same, I think.
Okay, and then how long did you stay in camp before you had to go do something?
I would say a couple weeks before I went out. Because when we first got there, we had to learn to rappel, and we had to walk out of a Chinook on a ladder. So we had a lot more training. So maybe a week or two of training.
Right, because you had the CERTS training, I guess they called it, so the 101st Airborne Zone training. And is that when you found out you didn't have to use a parachute?
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, thank God for that. But even still, going and learning to rappel, that was a little shaky too. So.
All right, you get that. Now, what time of year is it now that you get out
So
there?
you get there. I got there in August, in a couple weeks.
Okay.
So August, September, and then we stayed around camp. I feel we stayed around camp, but I remember going up to the DMZ one time for a mission. When the Marines were pulling out, and we had to clear an LZ, and they had a lot of explosives left. We had to detonate. That's where I learned explosives in the field.
All right.
They didn't teach you that much back at Fort Leonard Wood.
Now, if you're going to go in and clear an LZ, how did that work?
Well, you'd go in there and they give you chainsaws. You cut down all the trees, and then whatever you can blow up, you blow up. I had to repel one time on one mission. I can't remember exactly when it was, but that's one time too many. You're 150 feet up in the air on a rope and with all your gear and all that stuff, and that was plenty.
So you weren't necessarily clearing totally uncleared places when you went in. There was some room to get a helicopter in usually.
Usually we set down, most places. But if there's unexploded, demo or munitions, we went in there and blew them in place.
So in a lot of cases, you're going in where there had been a fire base already, And now you're clearing it out. You got to close it up and make sure you don't leave anything behind.
Right.
Okay. So you kind of go in that way. So is that sort of what you're doing then in the fall of '69?
Yeah, we did. I remember going on one mission for booby traps. We had a couple guys killed in another squad, so they sent our squad in, and there was booby traps in these buildings and stuff. So we cleared that out. I had a little piece of shrapnel come back and stick me in the arm. That was my only scar, so I do have that. But I was very fortunate. And then we went on minesweeping on the roads, and we found a huge TNT or whatever in the road. So we blew everything in place because we don't try and move it. That obviously, so that's the smart thing to do, I would say.
And then did you bring in another part of the battalion will come in and fix the road?
Fix the road, yeah.
Because your unit was largely just does demolition and clearing work?
Right.
Okay.
And building the fire bases.
All right. And when did you start building fire bases?
Well, I think I was out to Catherine. We were out there, so we, run concertina wire and trip wires and set claymores, and so we were working all the time. Then you had to pull guard duty at night usually, but they did treat the engineers well. Because they're specialties, so they take you in there, and when you're done, they bring you back out, back to the rear.
And when you're out and you're working on building a fire base, then will the infantry around for security, and then you do your job?
Right.
All right.
They secured the fire bases, yeah.
Okay. And then you get there, and earlier in the year in '69, there'd been the big fight at Hamburger Hill, and the division had taken a lot of losses, and there was continuing fighting in the Ashaw Valley. But did you not go into the Ashaw in the first months when you were there?
I'm pretty sure I did. Actually, when I got to Camp Evans, one of my best friends was there, and he was on Hamburger Hill, that I went to school with, John Hover. So he experienced all that, but I think he probably left 2 or 3 months right after I got there.
Right.
But, we went out to, and I think Greg mentioned this, but there was a big dam out there, the monsoons were coming, so we blew this dam up. And I never saw so much mud in my life. Because when the monsoons hit, oh my God, it buried the tank, you couldn't even move. And then we blew up positions so the enemy wouldn't take them over.
Right.
Fortifications. Which is I thought, oh my God, you're just going to keep doing this every year or what? It's stupid.
So we're basically destroying our own bases, our own positions in the valley. Okay. And then why would they have to pull out of the valley every year?
Because you can't do nothing during the monsoons. It's just, everything is so wet. Well, it's wet all the time anyway, but it's just...
But you can't get the helicopters in.
Right, because of the cloud cover and all that stuff, so there's so many things that can concern, I guess.
Right. Now, were you, at that point, blowing up things that the Vietnamese had left behind? Were you trying to destroy their bunkers or their supply caches?
No, mostly stuff that we did.
Okay.
Actually, I never saw the enemy the whole time I was there.
All right.
But I knew they were there.
Okay. Now, was Evans sort of your home base the whole time you were over there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you start out, you make some trips into the Ashaw, and then the monsoon comes in, and then that kind of after that, when you go up to the DMZ or that area?
Yeah. Yep, we went up to the DMZ. I would say December, I don't know, but I was back in the rear for Christmas, and I was even there for Thanksgiving, so it was in between, you know.
What's when you're not out on one of these missions? What's daily life like on the base?
Oh, back there in the rear, it was all right. I did a lot of work in the rear because of my carpenter skills.
Okay.
So I redid the mess hall. I built an NCO club. I mostly work by myself, mainly because of my carpenter skills from before I got in the service. So.
Okay, so you kind of had something to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You always had
while
something to
you're
do.
there.
Yeah.
All right, and what do you do for meals and things?
Oh, I actually think the mess hall put out some good meals when you're in the rear, especially around the holidays. But yeah, the only time we had sea rations was out in the field and stuff.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. All right, and how large was your squad? How many men?
I say 7.
Okay.
maybe in a squad.
And then did you know the other guys in the platoon, or mostly just your own squad? Or
Mostly my own squad, you know, because everybody was put in different areas, different situations.
Right, because you're sent out as squads to do the different
Right,
jobs, and not
right.
as platoons or companies or anything like that.
Right.
Okay. And they go to any battalion in the division that needs
Yeah,
something.
wherever they're needed. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, were there some battalions that you worked with more than others, or was it just all kind of a mix?
No, it was a mix. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Now, one of there's some standard things that people say or assume about what goes on in Vietnam, especially in these rear area bases. One of them is that there are racial tensions present, that blacks and whites don't necessarily get along, or the blacks segregate themselves. Or did you notice any of that yourself?
Well, yeah, you know, the way they used to greet, and you know, whites hung out with whites mostly, and the blacks hung out with. But I don't see any tensions there. And you were either a pothead or a boozer, one or the other. There wasn't. You had to do something. I mean, to have a straight guy over there that did nothing. I mean, I don't know how he could do that. You know.
Well, there were a few.
Yeah, there were a few,
very
probably.
religious or something, and some
Right.
reason to motivation for it. But yeah, so basically, so you're not, seen in like fights or other
No,
stuff
I
like
never.
that.
We never had that.
Okay.
And I was probably one of the tallest, and I hung out with another guy that was. So we never had no problems with him. Who the hell would want to do that anyway? But
Yeah,
I would.
yeah. I mean, that's sort of important to know, because
Right.
in some sources or versions, oh yeah, it's terrible, all this stuff going on all the time, and
No.
not everybody's experience.
No.
Okay, because you've got a lot of guys who'd smoke pot when they're back in the rear. Were there more serious drug problems that you ever noticed?
No, I didn't. I'm sure you could get everything right off the post. I mean, I never did any of that stuff. I drank my beer, but
Okay.
that was enough for me.
All right. And then where does the beer come from?
Oh, the PX, or they had, the PX or whatever it was, commissary.
And do they have an enlisted men's club or an NCO club?
Yeah, well, I built the NCO
Oh, that's
club.
right, yeah.
And we hung out there after a while. Yeah.
Okay. But then when you go out in the field, does everybody stay clean?
Oh, pretty much. Well, I don't know if these guys smoke pot out there. The guys that I was with, I know they didn't, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there was some that,
Yeah.
And then when you're out in the field, you don't want to have a cigarette lit up.
Yep.
You'll be a target, So I'm sure they cut back a little bit.
But you didn't notice on the fire bases smelling anything interesting?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Now, when you're okay, now then when you're back on the base, you mentioned people get stuff from the village and that kind of thing. Did you see much of the Vietnamese civilians when you're in the rear?
Oh yeah, we went to Way. We went to the Perfume River, and but everything was Americanized. Everything these people had was from America. They didn't have nothing, which is, I mean, anything you wanted on the black market that we needed, they had. So, there's probably a lot of corruption going on here and there, I'm pretty sure. So,
Oh yeah, that was part of the bigger problem.
Yep.
Okay, and what impression did you have of the Vietnamese themselves?
I didn't think they wanted us there. I mean, when I first got there, they said, "Don't stick your hand out the window; they'll rip your watch off your hand." I remember that. So I never did that again. But I didn't feel like they wanted us there.
Okay. What understanding did you have of why you were there in the first place?
Well, today I just can't figure why we were there at all. But back then I was proud to do my duty. And that was probably it.
'Cause you were there because your country called you.
That's right.
Right. So you weren't really thinking about larger, power politics or any of that
No.
stuff. Yeah.
But now I feel that's what it all is. It's politics, and war is big business, and it's always going to be here.
All right. But at that point, you're basically pretty much just a kid, and you did what
Right.
you're supposed to do.
I mean, this is a whole new world
All right.
compared to Binghamton.
Now, you spend some time in the lowlands and so forth, but eventually get to about March or so. Monsoon kind of starts to move out of these areas. Now you're going to go up into the hills more and start building fire bases. All right. Do you remember the bases that you worked on then? You said you worked on Catherine. Where else did you go?
Well, then the next major thing, which was April, we went up to Ripcord,
All right.
and the first of April, That's when we got hit. That's my first experience with, the enemy.
People shooting at you.
That's right.
Okay. Now, and then before that, there had been one attempt already to establish a base on Ripcord in March, and that had failed. They'd aborted that.
Yeah.
And April 1st is the second try.
Right.
Now, describe your experience that day.
Well, that day we went up there, and I remember distinctly the pilot, the chopper pilot. There was two of us, I think, two or three of us engineers on the flight, and he told us that LZ is hot. So when you get there, you get your stuff and get off. I mean, fast. So that was, we landed, and they almost kicked us off, because they wanted to get the hell out of it. They already had another chopper down. They was sitting up there already. So then you don't know what the hell to do. I mean, you're on the ground, so maybe one of the grunts or the other guy's already there. They find a spot and just start shooting down the hill, So if anybody's coming up, they're going to think about it. So
Okay, see, now describe physically this place that you're landing. What does it look like?
no, it's just, Vietnam from the air is just like the United States used it for target practice. There's bomb craters everywhere. And when you get to Ripcord, there is no foliage. I mean, it's all gone, like when they used Agent Orange or whatever. Most of the fire bases were clear.
Right.
So all there was is tree stumps and brush
And this is on a rocky hilltop, basically.
Yep.
All right, with enough space on there. What was going to go onto that base?
they were going to put artillery. So when we got there, there was nothing. So we were driven off that night. We had to go to there was another company of grunts that had an LZ. So we stayed on Ripcord all day and got mortared all day that day. And then right at the dark, I don't know what time it was, 9, 10 o'clock, we had to go down the mountain to this other LZ, I don't know, a mile or two away.
Right.
And hump that in the middle of the night, no lights, no nothing, scared to death.
All right. Now it was B Company of the 2nd of the 506 that went in with you. Interviewed one of those fellows, and he said that when they got down the side of the hill and they went to join this first other company, they couldn't actually fly out of there right away.
Yeah.
And that also the other guys didn't want to give him any food.
Oh, I don't know. We left a lot of stuff up there. They just said, leave the stuff up there and go. So
But you went down, but you don't remember not having enough stuff to eat or anything like that.
that was my least of my worries. I just wanted to get through the night. But
Okay. And did you just have to spend the one night down there before you got out? Or?
well, actually, I spent the night there, and then the lieutenant of the engineers or whoever was in charge come around and asked for a couple guys to go back up and get the bodies.
Oh.
There was 3 guys that were killed up there, 1 engineer and 2 grunts. Although there may have been more killed before I landed because there was a lot going on.
So did you go up?
So myself and another engineer went back up. I can't remember his name, but and we humped. That was kind of scary. And we humped it back to this new LZ. You know, carried the guy on a stretcher, and his name was Milton Swain.
Now, when you went up, did you get shot at?
No.
Okay, so leaving you alone at that point.
Yeah, they left us alone. Yeah.
All right. And then having done that, now did they take you back to Evans at that point? Or?
Well, yeah, after a while, yeah, they took good care of the engineers. So we went out, and the grunt stayed there. So.
All right. We were talking about you had been with that attempt on April 1st to set up the base in Ripcord, and that doesn't happen, and then you get back to your base again.
Right.
Now, when eventually C Company does get up there, and then do you go back and start building the place?
Yes, we go back up, I think it was 10 days, 11 days later, and it was quiet then, nothing. I was probably up there 2 or 3 more weeks, and we built a fire base. They had bulldozers up there, and we built bunkers out of 12 by 12 beams, and they flew them out by Chinooks, and they had to dig huge holes in the ground for these, of course, for these bunkers, but of course we didn't get it to stay in them, the officers and everybody else did, but it was a lot of work, and we blew foxholes with charges, and I remember using Bangalore torpedoes. They were from World War II. There was a lot of stuff from World War II. I think our sea rations were too. So that was something different. And you know, we blew up a lot of stuff, so we weren't very cautious about it. So you yell fire in the hole, and hopefully everybody would get out of the way and duck. But I'm sure, you know, the concussions from a lot of these explosions, they affected you.
Okay. Now, who's giving the directions up there?
Well, we had a Lieutenant Smith, you know, by going through some of my pictures I had. He was in charge of the engineer.
Okay, so you had a platoon leader at that
Right.
point with you, because this is a bigger operation. There's more than one squad
Right.
working on there at the time.
Yes.
All right. And then were any of the Army officers kind of around or helping supervise?
No, not us. Not that I
Yeah,
know.
because there was a captain by the name of Vasquez who was up there, this Puerto Rican old soldier, who was telling the men. The men were helping put up the concertina wire, and he had regular barbed wire up, and he was telling them what to do. He was so he probably ordering the soldiers around,
Right.
But not the engineers,
Right.
Okay, because he had a lot to do with helping lay out the place.
Yeah, we were blowing up a lot of tree stumps and, you know, clearing fields of fire and stuff
Okay.
like that. So.
And then what do you have to do for the artillery positions?
Well, mostly that was probably done by the dozer engineer,
Okay.
operating engineers and stuff like that. But, you know, just to level the positions off. And of course, we filled tons of sandbags, you know, days doing that. So, I mean, you know, and while I was in the rear as well, probably when rainy season, we were building these frames for the bunkers out of the 12 by 12 beams and stuff. So we did that as well back in the rear. And that kept us busy back there.
All right. But you say you spent a couple of weeks up on top of Ripcord
Yeah,
constructing
at
it.
least 2 or 3 weeks.
All right. And then where do you sleep when you're up there?
You know, they had metal culverts, plus we were in a foxhole. When we first got there wasn't nothing. I mean, so there was 3 of us in the foxhole or whatever. Then we had to do guard duty at night too as well. So we didn't get a whole lot of sleep.
Okay. And did you ever get any incoming fire while you were there?
Not after the April 1st, no.
Okay. So it was quiet enough, and it could be like any place else on some level at that stage.
Right.
All right. Now then, once you finished with that, then you go back again to Evans, and then do they just keep sending you out to build other bases now, or clear LZs? Or?
No, actually, I think we stayed in the rear because April, May, probably May. I can't remember a lot of things we did. Maybe that's when I did a lot of work in the rear with the NCO club and the mess hall too. But I know I was pulled off of one of the bases because they knew I did tile floors, so I had to go to an artillery unit and put tile in with their number 254. I had to put this in the floor. It was just a knack. You know, I made sure it lasted a few days so I'd stay in the rear. Because
Right.
after one experience, that's enough.
Okay. So this is just some unit commander has some strange idea of what he wants, and
Yeah.
go get me a guy to go do that.
Oh, sure, sure.
All right. And now, do you have any sense of sort of what's going on generally in the war around you, or?
No, not really. I mean, I don't even know if I listened to the radio, but I mean, I might have looked at Stars and Stripes, and as well, I did get newspapers from back home. Eventually, later on, but of course they were, you know, a week or so late.
Right.
You know, but still, I see where one of my old girlfriends got married. So,
But you're still not really paying that much attention to sort of the bigger news stories or what's happening in Vietnam or that kind of thing.
no.
All right. Now, as you get into the summer, the actual fighting around Ripcord heats up quite a bit. And were you aware of any of that?
No, not much because, you know, like I say, we were pulled off, and it was. I guess some of the engineer guys did go back out, you know, for certain things, but they didn't pull on our squad or anything. So.
Right. Now, they're doing some opening or reopening of bases and so forth up in the hills after Ripcord too. And did you get involved? And then they're also periodically cutting new LZs for the units that are in the jungle in that area.
No, maybe that's when I went on that one repel mission to, you know, because we had to cut a new LZ. It was a down chopper. They had to go in there and get the bodies out. So we had to cut an LZ so the grunts could get in there.
Right, and then there were a number of things like that that went on right around Ripcord itself.
Oh, yeah,
So
sure.
that could have been part of what you were doing. Now, for you, is this mostly kind of like a 9-to-5 job?
No, I wouldn't say that. When you were in the rear, once in a while we got a rocket or a mortar attack at Evans, but it wasn't very often. It was, sporadic, but nothing to worry about, that I could see. And I didn't run and hide every time, you heard the siren or something coming, but, eventually you mellowed out, I guess. You didn't have too many good times. One time we went to Eagle Beach, but other than that.
Okay. Now, did you ever do R&R?
No, I didn't go on R&R. I didn't know if I'd want to come back if I left, I did know one guy that he was in our unit. He extended for 2 months to get an early out, and he got killed. So I knew I would never do that. I would never do that. So.
Okay. I don't. Do they make much of an effort at that point to encourage you to stay on?
Yeah, they asked you, I guess. Yeah, it was out there, but I knew I wouldn't do it because, I didn't want to press my luck.
Okay. Now, aside from getting some newspapers from home, how much contact did you have with people back home?
Just letters. I wrote, not maybe once a week or something like that. But
Okay, mostly just your parents you're writing to, or brothers,
Yeah.
sisters, that kind of thing?
yeah, just my parents. I did remember my brother. They were both my younger brother and sister, but.
Okay. And now, did your family, aside from newspapers, did they send you anything else?
No, well, family, and a couple friends I had, but I asked for magazines and Jiffy Pop. Other than that, you didn't get much. I did get.
But I guess on the base, you can get a fair number of things in the PX or whatever. It's a
Yeah.
little more civilized than being out in the field all
Oh,
the time.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, how would you describe or characterize like the people you reported to, the NCOs or the occasional officer? Were they all right to get along with and work with?
Most of them, yeah, most of them. I felt a lot of the officers, especially the new ones, shake and bakes or whatever they're called, that no common sense. They might have been real smart people, but some of the stuff they had you do was just, unless they do it just to irritate you or keep you busy, I don't know. But
Well, what kinds of things would they do?
it's just stupid stuff, Well, I don't know if I could describe it, but why do these certain things, whatever they were, and I really can't think of them right now. But
Well, was it the kind of thing where they're just trying to sometimes they get fussy about how you dress or what you look like?
well, that as well, especially when you're in the rear,
Right.
you can't go without a shirt. You got to, have a pressed uniform. You had the starch and all that stuff. So you had the locals do your uniforms when
Right.
you're in the rear.
Right.
But
So you have civilians working on the base or coming in and doing the laundry or
well,
that kind of thing?
I don't know if we sent it out, but after a while, I think some of them worked on the base, but not too many.
Okay. So there is a concern for that kind of thing. You have to look more military than the line units.
No, definitely,
do.
yeah.
Okay. And then when you go out in the field, were there situations where some new lieutenant or sergeant tries to tell you what to do?
Yeah. Well, you pretty much did what they told you to do because you didn't want to rock the boat, I guess. But and then if you could get away with something, you just let it slide, I guess. But something that didn't feel important to me.
Yeah.
But I did my job and I worked hard at it.
Okay.
So
And is that the impression that you had of most of the guys in your unit?
yeah, most of them did. There was a couple guys that wouldn't. I'm not repelling. I'm not going up that tower in practice. I'm not doing that. And I don't know what happened to them, if they kept them there, but I don't know.
Okay. Now, over the course of the time you're there, does the personnel in your unit sort of turn over? So you get a lot of new guys coming in,
Oh, yeah.
and old guys going out.
Yeah.
Now, the theory was that the old guys sort of orient or train the new ones and so forth, and so you've always got qualified people. Did that work?
Oh, I think so. I didn't. I don't think I pressured anybody, but most of the guys that come in, they did their job, and that's the only way you can learn something like that. How would you? You have to on the job training, I guess. So they did it, and after Ripcord and things kind of slowed down. I don't think there were that many missions going on, really.
Yeah, because it does get quieter. And then when do you leave Vietnam?
I left in August,
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not very long after Ripcord.
That's right. So hey, I'm getting short here. You
Mhm.
know, I don't want to go back out there unless, you know, I really have to.
Mhm.
So, you know, you had a couple close calls, that's enough, you know.
All right.
For me anyway. Or I talked to Greg and he says he liked it on the field, but not me. You know, I did my part.
Mhm.
So,
Okay. Now you get to the end of your Vietnam time. And what's the process by which they take you back home?
well, you just turn in most of your gear, and then when we were up at Evans, everything was dark at night, you know. And then when I get to Cameron Bay or wherever it was, it's all lit up. And I said, oh my God, you know, this is like you're back in the world again.
Mhm.
I said, oh my God. And then you get on the plane with stewardesses. Yep, we're going home.
Now, do you remember when you got on the plane, did you see new guys coming in?
See, I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure.
Wasn't even on your radar.
No. I know the only reason I know this because Greg had a picture of me. He was back of me. We're both standing in line to get the hell out of there. He took a picture of me, so that was good. We're
All
getting
right.
out of there.
Okay. Now, where do you land in the States?
Washington,
Okay, so Fort Lewis or?
Fort Lewis.
Yeah, all right. And then what happens to you once you land?
Well, we're there a day or two to D-Rosada or whatever, and then we get a flight back to Boone County, Binghamton, New York.
Okay. Now, did you still have time left to
Yeah,
serve?
I had 6 months.
Okay. Now, when you went home, did you fly home in uniform or did you go
Yeah, I
civilian
flew
clothes?
home in uniform.
Okay. And did anybody look at you funny or treat you funny on the way back because you were wearing a uniform?
Not really. I never had no trouble with that, I guess.
So you didn't really bump into protesters or anything
No,
like that? Okay.
no.
All right. And yet, what was it like now to get back home after all that? Did you have to make an adjustment to being a civilian for a little while?
Oh
Before?
yeah, you're just happy to be back in the world. And my family was there to greet me. It
Okay.
was good.
And now, where do they send you to finish out your enlistment?
Fort Belvoir, and
Okay.
they put me down there as a training NCO. Never typed a letter in my life. See, they just put you wherever they needed you. So all I had to do was make a schedule out for these guys all week long. Never pulled no duty. I had it easy. Was home every weekend, so it's only a 5-hour trip back home. So I had it pretty good.
Okay. Now, did they encourage you at that point to re-enlist, or they just figure you're going to just finish your time and go home?
Well, they mentioned it, and of course I wasn't gonna, because I figured, you know, a year or two I'd be going right back there. So the way the war was going, I who would have thought it would have lasted that long?
Yeah, you really couldn't tell anymore. Because you were there in a period when they were drawing down, there were units going out,
Yeah.
but I guess from where you were and what you were doing, there had been a fair amount going on up in that sector anyway, and
Yeah,
without a big old battle going on at the end, so who knows?
yeah.
Okay, so you get back, so when do you actually get discharged?
In March of '71.
Okay, and once you're out, what do you do?
What do? I probably take a couple weeks off and relax, and then I got another job working for a carpenter. So I went back into that business, and that's what I've done all my life is
All right.
carpentry, remodeling, and stuff.
Okay. Now, to look back at the time you spent in the service, what effect do you think that had on you?
Well, after Swain got killed, he had it made, you know. So I never complained. I don't complain.
Okay, because that happened. That had happened on Ripcord. You'd been there quite some time by the time that happened too.
Yeah.
All right. Now, do you think you gained anything positive out of just the service experience itself?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it does discipline you. I mean, and it makes you a better person, I think.
You may appreciate what's back here a little more.
You appreciate this country. Definitely.
All right. Now, after you got back, did you talk to people much about what you did in Vietnam, or?
No, I never spoke to anybody
Okay.
about it.
All right. And I don't know. Well, what changed that?
Well, maybe because other people are starting to come out. I mean, and the first time we ever did it, my daughter was a school teacher in Virginia, and they have a program,
RTC.
program down there, and they're more involved with the military. So they invited us to come down and speak of our experiences. So that's what
Okay.
started it. So
All right. And then how did you connect with the Ripcord Association?
actually, my brother, he was in the Coast Guard for 23 years, so he was online and he found it. You know,
Right.
I didn't know about it probably 2 years ago. So, and he's the one that got my medals for me because I didn't. I never got them. I mean, you know, this stuff. I never even thought about it. So until now, and I can't complain about the VA. They treat us great back home. They're great.
All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for coming in and sharing your story today.
My pleasure.